Joining us now, Mathew Dickerson, Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. I'm a little bit sore and beaten up and a bit bruised and sorry from the last week, but in general, very good, thank you.
All right, so let's just talk about that first then. You had a bit of a spill between, Walgett and Brewarrina, or Brewarrina and Burke?
No, it was in the morning session from Walgett to Bree. We're only about probably 35 k's out of Bree, and yeah, you've got to concentrate pretty hard when you're riding in a peloton. Wheels are only 30 centimetres apart, and one rider just lost concentration for a second, clipped a wheel, and that meant 6 of us ended up laying on the bitumen along the highway there, which was not a pleasant place to be. I think we're only doing about 30 kilometres an hour, but by the time I tell my grandkids, it'll be at least 60 kilometres an hour, I would suggest. I was a bit lucky. I only got a bit of skin off my right side, hip, knee, elbow, that type of thing, but one of our riders was knocked out completely, so he was ruled medically unfit for the rest of the ride. Another rider broke his collarbone, so a rider from Brewarrina broke his collarbone, and another rider did some damage to his rib area, so he had a bit of trouble breathing and turning, so he was ruled out as well. But apart from that, a very successful tour, and Burke was absolutely fantastic. The number one fundraising town along the whole tour was Burke. $20,000 at the auction in Burke was just unbelievable.
Yeah, good work. Now, so in the history of the Toyota Tour de Oroc, has that been the one with the most injuries?
We've never had injuries before. We've had some people who have been pulling into a stop and they just haven't managed to get their foot out of their cleat, so they might have just fallen over doing about 1 kilometre an hour. So we've had a couple like that, which sometimes happens, but nothing before where we've actually had multiple people or people going at speed or really any injuries. So, yeah, it's disappointing, but we all know there is a risk. When you go out and ride a bike, there's a risk. When you go out and ride a bike in a peloton on a highway, there's a risk. And I keep emphasising to all the riders, all the participants, number one priority is safety. We always focus on safety. And even in that particular incident, our safety plan came into action. We had 2 doctors, we had a paramedic. They swung into action, assessed people, put people in cars that needed to get into hospital. So as much as could be done after the accident, it was all handled very efficiently. So I was very impressed with our plans and the team that we had in place to do all of that. But yeah, it is the first, what I would call, real accident in the Tour de Oroc in the 5 times that we've done it.
All right. Now, the Toyota Tour de Oroc, as we've spoken in the lead up to it and across the event, it's raising funds for the Macquarie Homestay in Dubbo. One question that we really haven't spoken about is the Rotary Club of Dubbo South. Why did they get involved? Why do they do this?
I think most Rotary clubs, and Burke Rotary Club is no different, most Rotary clubs want to make a difference in the community and see if they can make a difference in any community. So when you get involved in events, it's something where, do you think you've got the skills in your club? Do you think you've got the ability to run an event, do some fundraising, whatever it might be, and is it going to make a difference in the community? And in this particular instance, there were some keen cyclists in the Rotary Club. There were people in there who certainly can organise events, there's no doubt about that. And you've got the Rotary umbrella. So when you try and get things like insurances, sometimes for an event like this, it's quite difficult to get insurance. But when you've got the Rotary umbrella over you, you've got that access to better facilities like Rotary insurance. So it makes sense for the Rotary Club to be involved. And in terms of homestay, which is obviously where all this money is going, our Rotary Club, as many Rotary Clubs around Dubbo do, they're involved in them on a month-to-month basis. There's one night a month we go up there and actually cook dinner for the people staying there and just talk to people there. So they've got someone to talk to. They're away from home. They may not have been necessarily having the time to cook a decent meal for themselves. So we like to get involved from that perspective as well. So it ties in with what we do on a month-to-month basis, but also what we like to do in terms of fundraising for big projects.
And it was a successful fundraiser?
Oh, absolutely. So we'll still keep adding the money. We've still got money coming in at the moment. As I said, the Burke auction was fantastic. Other auctions that occurred around the event, all that money is still to come in yet. But I'm pretty confident we started off with an initial target of 100,000. We got past that a few months ago. So then we raised our target to 150,000, and I'm pretty confident that we're past that already. So we'll have a final figure once we sum everything up, and then there's a couple of expenses to come out. Diesel fuel this time obviously is a greater expense. We had 2 extra vehicles because we had a bigger peloton, and diesel is through the roof. So we've got a couple of extra expenses there, but I'm pretty confident we'll still be over that $150,000 mark.
All right, and Looking forward to the next one?
Don't mention it, please. Don't mention it while you're on the ride and your bottom's hurting and you're tired and you're looking forward to that next stop. You're thinking, this will be the last one. We don't need to do this anymore. We've raised over $600,000 for Macquarie Homestay. Surely that's enough. But then you get home and you think about, that was a good time. Your scars and your wounds heal and you start forgetting about the pain. You think, that was a good event. We should do that again. So give me a few more days yet, Rod, before I get to that point.
We're talking with Mathew Dickerson, who's involved with the Toyota Tour de Oroc, member of the wonderful Rotary Club of South Dubbo. You're also the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. We're going to take a quick break and come back and talk to you about council stuff, if that's okay.
Sure thing.
We're speaking with Mathew Dickerson, Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. Now, you're looking at issues around policing in Wellington.
Certainly it's been something that's been talked about for some time, Rod. There isn't a 24-hour police station there. Talking to the police, they still say they've got a 24-hour police presence because someone can ring and then they can come across from Dubbo. But, of course, Dubbo's half an hour away. So there's been some efforts within Wellington to push forward with that. We took some information through to council. A couple of councillors from Wellington in particular were driving that forward. Councillors agreed in general that we should look at what's available now, what can we lobby with, what can we go forward with. And so that came through to council last week at our council meeting last week. And that particular resolution to look at that information in the report was strengthened a little bit in terms of really focusing on 24-hour policing. We'll get a meeting together with the police and just meet with councillors to see what methods we can go forward with to try and improve policing. Now, whether that involves having the police station open 24 hours a day or manned 24 hours a day, or just getting a police presence there, because when you look at a police car now, it really is a police station. You've got so much information available to police in that car. They've got so many electronic components in there and so much access to data that they really are mini police stations as they drive around. So whether or not it needs a station open or whether or not it just needs a police presence in Wellington every hour of every day, they're the sort of things we'll look at. We'll talk to the police and see what the best way to go forward is lobbying. Obviously, the police can't make the decision here. They needs to go through at a higher level for the department to make the decision as to what stations are open and where people are stationed. So that's something that's very important to Wellington people, and we support that. So we'll just go forward and keep working on getting a solution there.
And I will say it's an issue in other towns right across my listening area. In Canamble, they're wanting the similar sort of thing, a 24-hour police station. But it does come down to just having more police, because even in a town like Burke, we've got the 24-hour police station, but sometimes there's only one or two police persons rostered on.
And that's exactly right. It is an issue. It's an issue around availability of police. It's an issue around affordability of policing. So these things are important to the community. If I could just say one thing, Rod, if people stop committing crimes, we wouldn't have these problems. So it is really a community solution. But unfortunately, I'm living in la-la land if I think people are going to stop committing crimes.
And what's this about the Dubbo Regional Council and trapping Indian miners?
There was a bit of a contentious issue on Thursday night when we had our council meeting, because one of the councillors was talking about the need to start trapping Indian miners, and he hadn't given any context to it. Some people there watching online and watching in the gallery were suddenly concerned that Dubbo Regional Council was going to go to India and capture young children and bring them back. And so we had to quickly allay the fears of those people and explain that Indian miner, there's a bird, Indian miner, the miner is spelled M-Y-N-A. It's not native to this area. It does cause problems for some of our native birds and some of our native vegetation. So there is a process, or we'll be looking at a process to try and see if we can trap some of those Indian miners, the bird variety, not the human variety, and see if we can remove them from our area, because obviously you want your native birds, you want your native vegetation, you want all these wonderful things we've got in this area to be able to flourish. And when you have introduced species, that creates a major problem. So there was certainly some concern, but just to make sure everyone knows, we're concerned about the birds, not the young children.
Yes, I know that the employment rate is very low around Dubbo and the Arana area, but trapping Indian miners and getting them to do some work won't work.
Might not be the solution, Rod.
Now, what's the Dubbo Regional Council doing in regards to the motorbike rally on the 7th of May?
This is an event that started back in 2019, and Church Street was closed off for the rally. It was a very successful event. They had about 1,700 motorbikes. After information coming through afterwards showed about $2.4 million was injected into our local economy. Very successful event. And just for me to clarify, we're talking about bikers, not bikies, and that's a huge difference there. There was certainly a good police presence there at the time to make sure that you didn't have any bikies turning up, any gangs, that sort of thing. And again, I think people get confused. Bikers are people that love their motorbikes. They're typically a bit older. They're maybe in their 50s or a bit older. They've usually got fairly good income levels, or their discretionary spend is quite high. So they do spend money when they come to a community. And one of the organisers had been to similar events in America and thought that it'd be great to have that same sort of event in Dubbo. Unfortunately, the last 2 years have been knocked out due to COVID. But this year, they want to go ahead, the organisers want to go ahead with it again, but this time they want to move from Church to Talbragar Street. And there were a couple of shopkeepers in Talbragar Street a little bit concerned about this. They thought they might lose trade with extra people in the street, making it harder for their regular customers to get there. So there was a fair bit of discussion and debate about this on Thursday night at Council, but in the end, Council decided to go ahead with the street closure. So on the 7th of May, Talbragar Street will be closed from the traffic lights through to Macquarie Street, and that will be filled with motorbikes. That'll be filled with stalls, with people. 1,700 last time. I'm pretty confident they'll double that number this time around. It was very successful last time. So I'm pretty confident they'll get 3,000 people there. Hopefully some of the shopkeepers that were a bit concerned about it will come up with some methods to attract some of those customers that are out in the street into their stores and increase their purchases for that day and still allow access to their normal customers. So it's something that has the potential, I believe, to build and create more people, more visits to Dubbo. And again, that sort of event can be fantastic. You can attract huge numbers of people. There's no reason you can't go from 3,000 to 5,000 to 10,000, go from one day to multiple days and put a huge range of events on for a huge number of people who love to get on their motorbikes and ride.
Sounds like a festival of motorbikes in Dubbo on the 7th of May. Sounds really good to me.
Yeah.
Mathew Dickerson, I thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.